Today's topic is ethics, and it's really concentrated on engineering ethics to be specific. I'm going to break this up into, I believe, three different videos. The first one will be on an example, an ethical example. And then after that, we'll kind of talk about ethics itself, and then I'll go through some other examples. Okay. So let's pretend we have some van driver and passengers, a highway department, a car driver and passengers, some car company, a judge and jury, and families, of course. This is our scenario. And there's a story that goes with this. The story goes such that you were, as a passenger of a car, you were filling up your car with gas. You got on the highway and started going down the road. And as you're going down the road, you realized, I forgot to put my gas cap on. So you're going to pull over on the side of the road and put the gas cap back on. You pull over to the side of the road, and this lovely van comes going down the road behind you. You see it coming up behind you, and it has a wooden bumper, just for effect. You're like, oh no, this van is going to hit me. Bam, it hits you, right? Smash. You die, and all of the passengers in the car die also. So let's take a little recap of this whole scenario. Sorry for the sad story, but we have a car and driver with some passengers in it. They pull over and to put the gas cap back on, and everybody dies. There's this highway department that has a road that doesn't have a shoulder. This image is one of a bridge, but there's no shoulder to really pull completely over on them. And then the van driver had some passengers in it also. They have a nice wooden bumper. They also have another slight little problem. There was drugs and alcohol also involved in the van and with the driver and the passengers. Of course, you have grieving families for the passengers in the vehicle. And of course, there's always some judge and jury. There's someone has to sue somebody, right? And then we've got the car company. So the question really becomes, whose fault is it, right? Who gets sued in this situation? Well, you can look at it a lot of different ways. We have the car and driver. Why'd they pull over where there was no shoulder in the road, right? Pull over somewhere else where it's safe. Seems like it's their fault and they have no case for them. You have the highway system, right? They didn't provide a good enough shoulder in that area. They should have a better shoulder. Then you have the van drivers, of course, they have their own issues going on, right? Um, so who do we really sue? Well, as a family, right, you you could go after the highway department, I suppose. It's kind of going to be a legal battle, right? But there's also this car company. Car companies have a lot of money. Let's go after them. Well, why would we go after the car company? Well, what reason would there be to go after them? Let's take a look. This is an actual story, and this is what really actually happened. A long time ago, before many of you were born, or all of you were born, there was a car called the Pinto. Back in 1968, there was some threat from the Germans and Japanese bringing in some subcompact vehicles into the market. The VW Bug was one of the big ones at the time, and Ford wanted to make sure that they could compete with them. So they wanted to sell a brand new car by 1971, and they were going to do normally it would take 3.5 years to do such a thing, right? But they're going to do it in just over 2 years. So they're cutting out more than like a year and a half worth of development and product design type work, right? And how could this be done, right? Well, we know some ways. We've studied about scheduling and everything. And one of the big ways is to do some tasks concurrently, right? We can build and design the tooling at the same time that we're actually still designing it, right? Kind of do some things at the same time before we actually test it all. Maybe we're designing the tooling and everything at the same time. So that's what they were able to do. They were able to do some of these tasks parallel or concurrently to reduce the time. what they found out was that there was 11 rear-end collisions, the tests that they performed. And when they did these tests, when they were designing the car, 8 of them failed at an average of 31 miles per hour. 3 of them passed due to gas tank modifications. Right, and if I take a look here, um, give me a second, we can look at the testing that they did. This was the testing that they did. Here's the vehicle going in, and it hits the Pinto, and boom, the car explodes and goes on fire, right? Bad, bad scenario. All right, so should they make these changes? Right, this is a decision that engineers have to make, management has to make, right? The whole company has to make. So let's take a look at it and see what was going on, what happened, and what led to their decision-making process. So should these changes be made? At the time, it was thought that safety doesn't sell. I don't know if you know Lee Iacocca. He was very big in bringing back the Chrysler line of products way back when with the K car. But at the time, he was working for Ford, and he said that safety doesn't sell. He developed a few cars that had extra safety features that you could buy as options. Nobody wanted to buy them. So he said safety doesn't sell. He also was running this project, the Pinto project now, and he had the limits of 2,000. And it was essentially that it was going to cost no more than $2,000 and it was going to weigh no more than 2,000 pounds. So anything that was going to impact this 2,000, we didn't want it to happen. So you could look at the tank location, right? Maybe we could move the tank location. So we asked Ford engineers, and Ford engineers said safety isn't the issue, trunk space is. You have no idea how stiff the competition is over trunk space, right? You got to make sure you get your golf clubs in there, right? If you're gonna, they have to fit in the trunk, otherwise the car is useless. So they weren't really thinking right about this at the time. Well, the main thing we really should do is look at costs, right? And accountants and those types of people, the bean counter kind of people, do what we call a cost benefit analysis. You'll learn about cost benefit analysis, by the way, in Engineering 282, our engineering economics class. But let's just take a look at what it is. So if we look at it here, the costs are really the expected cost of producing the Pinto with fuel tank modifications. So what is the cost to make these modifications? Like we said, some of them actually survived and did well. Well, if we look at it, it was about $11 per unit. There was 11 million units. It would cost $121 million to do this modification. Okay, so let's take a look at the benefits. And the benefits are, what are the costs without doing any fuel modifications? Okay, so what are those costs? Some of the costs, of course, would be we're going to have accidents. So let's make some assumptions and say we're going to have 2,100 accidents. And with that, 180 burn deaths, 180 serious burn injuries, 2,100 cars burned out, right? Let's put some cost to all this. We say that the unit cost of an accident, assuming out-of-court settlement, is $200,000 per burn death, right? That's how much they're going to it would cost now or cost then to settle out of court. And if it was injury, 67,000 and then 700 per vehicle. And with all that said, if we do this calculation and put this all in, we end up at $150 million, right? So that $200,000, just so you know, that's probably about 6 million today, not equivalent that way, but that's what the government has on your head essentially. At the time it was about $200,000. There's a dollar value for a life of a person, and it is used in these types of calculations, right? And today, for this type of accident and things, it would be about 6 million. It's different for different types of accidents too, I believe. Okay, so we have the question of 121 million versus 50 million. Of course we're going to build the car, right? The company says. It's the financial reasons alone make it sense to do that. So they did. They sold the car. It was very successful. A lot of people bought it. This is a souped up one. It's looked like that, but not that souped up, right? By 1973, they showed field reports suggesting that the Pinto was susceptible to light-ups, meaning it was starting on fire. The following year, more reports came in. They did not do any recalls. In the end, they ended up with 27 people had died. They had over 100 lawsuits. Ford paid out millions of dollars, and they were forced to do a recall, right? And it really, in the bottom line, ruined their reputation. So it was even more than that 50 million. It really hurt the company a lot. And also, if you think about it ethically, it doesn't make sense to put that much value, those dollars on someone's life when the solution could be so simple. All right, I'm going to end this here. We'll start out talking about what is ethics in just a minute.